Hello and welcome to this episode of Coach Etch Tips. I am so excited today. I got a gentleman on today that I've known for about the last 10, 12 years. He works in town. He's a youth pastor. He works for Young Life. Some of you may be familiar. Young Life's an organization spread all around the country. It's a little break from the norm of having teachers on here. But Cesar's involved in the schools. He's involved in sports. He's involved with youth nights with Young Life with students. And he's just made wonderful connections with the youth in our community. And over the last 16, 17 years he's been here, he not only impacts the students' lives, but now he's got them coming back as young adults. And I'd really like you to hear a little bit about his philosophy and his perspective. And hopefully you'll get some nice tips and tidbits that can really help you. So enjoy this show. If you love it, be sure and share it with your friends. You'll see the subscribe button down the corner. Feel free to subscribe and pass it on. Look forward to seeing you. Enjoy the show. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in to Coach Etch Tips today. I am really excited here, as I told you in the preview, with my friend here, Cesar Castillejos. Correct, Cesar?
Yes, sir. That's one way to say it, but that's how I say it.
Castillejos.
Yep.
Right? Okay, but my last name, Etienne, is Etienne in French, so it gets botched lots of times too when people say it. So I appreciate you being here today, Cesar. Folks, Cesar's got a real diverse background. He's done a lot of things, but the biggest part about him is that he is fantastic at connecting with teenagers and youth adolescents. And I first met him working through a Christian organization, Young Life, here in our metro area. He's not a teacher, but he has made a huge impact on the students in our community. And I think he's going to have a lot of thoughts and philosophies and contents that can really improve your ability to relate and connect to children. So Cesar, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this point.
There's a lot of windy roads to get there, but I'll kind of give you the short version of it. But I grew up in Fridley and born and raised in Fridley, graduated from Fridley High School. And growing up, this kind of plays into how I connect with students. Growing up, at the time, Fridley was a predominantly white city. And so the majority, if not all of my friends were white. And so just having a Spanish name, being Filipino, so the box that I check is Asian, I had to, at a very early age, navigate cultures. So growing up in a Filipino home, in a white suburb, that's where I grew up. That's kind of the baseline of my story starts in Fridley. I went to Bethel College at the time. Now it's Bethel University. I played basketball there for 2 years. And I ended up transferring to go to school at Westmont College in Santa Barbara. I majored in communication studies and public speaking. I wanted to go into film. I wanted to go into the movie industry. That's why I was out in California, but that didn't pan out. And I ended up moving back to Minnesota in 2003, which I told my mentor for 1 year. I told him I will come on staff with Young Life for 1 year, work with middle school students, and then I'm going to get a real job. I volunteered with middle school students all 4 years in college, 2 years in Minnesota, 2 years in California. So I had that in my history of working with students, but at that time I was just a volunteer. But that 1 year of staff on Young Life staff started in 2003, and it's been 17 years. And so I always say you live your life forward and you understand it backwards. And I tell people I'm a professional middle school student. I've only been out of middle school for 4 years, and that was when I was in high school. Because when I started volunteering freshman year of college, I jumped right back in. And so that's a little brief history of where I am now. In a lot of ways, I feel like I haven't gone anywhere because I'm still in the Twin Cities. I'm still in schools, but I definitely feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Well, that's great. One of the things, just lots of times, I mean, I know you've been a mentor to a tremendous number of kids in the Richfield area over the last 17 years since you've been around working here with our kids. Was there somebody in your life that kind of, as you went through your journey at points and times, that maybe you still stay in touch with, that was that mentor that really kind of impacted you to move you in different directions, and what that impact was and how that person did that to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of times when people get into youth work or are committed to middle school and high school students, it either comes out of their history saying someone did that for me. And then sometimes it comes out of the lack of that. So sometimes it's for people to say, well, no one was that for me. I'm kind of somewhere in between there because I don't remember a single person investing in my life. And I just say, oh, it was for sure this person that got me there. My brother and sister, I was the youngest, so they were in my life. But when a family member's there, you kind of feel like they're supposed to be. And I had good relationships with them. So it wasn't, oh, my older brother taught me, like my family was my family, taught me the core value of having family. I do remember in middle school, I would go to Northwest Athletic Club. Now it's Lifetime Fitness, and I would shoot hoops all the time. And there was a group of guys from St. Anthony that would let me play with them. They were in high school and I was in middle school, and they would teach me how to shoot. One guy in particular, his name was Damian Troop, and he was one of the best 3-point shooters in the state at the time. And I remember just watching him and trying to emulate him and just learn from shooting with Damian. And so it wasn't like one particular person, but it was the fact that there's older people that wanted me to get better. And I remember that feeling of, wow, these are guys that are my brother's age that have no reason to invest in me, but they are. And I just remember feeling like that was important to me. And I do remember one time, the 7th grade at Fridley Middle School, my 7th grade traveling game. These guys from St. Anthony, these high school kids from St. Anthony at the time, showed up to my basketball game for a traveling tournament. And I just remember looking back in the crowd and saying, oh my gosh, they came to watch me. And I remember that feeling of, wow, this is important for them to show up. And I share that story because I don't have one particular person, but I do remember what it felt like when someone outside of my family took interest in me as a person and my development. And that was just particular basketball, but I can't say that there was, hey, one mentor that did this for me. As I got older, my Young Life leader, Kirk Foote, he invested some his time with me, and he was actually the one that officiated my wedding. So walking alongside of someone was, I'd say, Kirk Foote for me, but I think it is just in general. So I remember that feeling of an outside family, someone outside of my family investing in me, had kind of inspired me to do the same for kids.
Yeah, and I'd like to dig more into that
Yeah.
because that's one of the big things I know when your Young Life gatherings happen at church, that you have your program, kids have fun, connect, something to eat a lot. But I've seen you so often outside of that gathering at church in kids' lives. And I think that's where I've taught and talking with educators and teachers that they venture outside that classroom. And you talk about how that made you feel that they really cared about me.
Mhm.
And what are some of the things as you have it within Young Life, but then you connect with them outside of there, and the things that you've done to really make that trusting relationship for that student knows you really care about them, the whole person.
That's a great question. And I as I think about that, it wasn't a strategy. There wasn't a guide. Someone didn't tell me like, hey, this is how you do youth work. It's twofold. One thing that I understood early on doing youth work is you don't have a 9 to 5. You don't have office hours. And so sometimes when people get into work, this type of work, they get exhausted a lot because they feel like they're always working, because you show up and you do office hours and you got to go to these kids' games and you got to go do these things. And the programs go till 9 o'clock at night. So there's one way that you think, hey, man, I've been working 12 hours today. For me personally, I had to break out of that mindset and understand my role. Like what am I doing and why am I doing it? I am here to support students, and that there's no hours for that. I'm here to help kids grow. And when you get a call from a kid at 11 o'clock, I can't say, hey, I'm off the books. Like I
Mhm.
clocked out at 9, I can't answer that. So part of it was erasing this box around my schedule that helped me understand my role. That kind of led to, when I go to games, I consider myself working, but I don't put myself on the clock. Does that make sense? Like
Wow,
when I
that's
go to a student's game or a play, in my mind, I'm not working. And when I find myself enjoying being there, that's even a bonus. And so there are some weeks and some days where I'm like, did I even work today? But when I look at the work, I worked like 18 hours today. And so that's one of the things that I've understood is that kids and relationships don't get built in my office hours. They get built around my life.
Yeah.
And so when I create space around just the way that I live, I create space for students to be walking alongside of me in my life. And so it's more of a mindset thing than these kind of strategies or techniques. And so I'm not sure if that's helpful, but it really helped me just thinking broadly about what am I really doing?
Well, you say that because I remember starting out as a young teacher and walking into the classroom and just, coming out of college, I knew I was excited to teach and coach and everything, but I didn't really have anybody ever show me how to dig into why you're doing. And you talk about kind of that passion, that purpose you have in life. And on social media, I got two big hashtags, and one of them is dreams, passion, and purpose. And I think sometimes as people working with youth, sometimes is through those years to kind of help them identify those dreams and hopefully find something they're passionate about. And they're willing to open up and talk and communicate once they trust you in that relationship. And I'm kind of jumping ahead. I used to do this at the end, but I know you're helping adults figure that same thing inside out, as we chatted before, and kind of what you've done with teenagers, you're doing with adults, because not everybody has that come to them in life.
Yep.
There's not a magic book on how to be a youth leader. Even though we get trained as teachers and educators, there's not a magic book on how to build relationships with students and get them to trust you and behave for you. But you got to start with the inside. And let's I'm going to jump ahead a little bit till we get to the end. I talk about that, but let's talk about you and helping people adjust the inside, whether it's kids learning to find that or adults finding it. You said it's the similar tools and process.
Yeah, it's been interesting doing this type of work for as long as I have. Working with middle school students when I was 18, 19, those middle school students are now adults. And so some of my first middle school students are now my volunteer leaders, and they're in their 30s. So it's as I've walked alongside of people and seen that, I realized that some of the questions middle school students are asking are the same questions that 22-year-olds are asking after they graduate.
Yep.
Where do I fit in? Where do I belong? What am I supposed to do? The reason why I invest in middle school students, because I want people to ask that question as early as you can. Who am I? What is at my core? What do I value? Because what happens if you don't ask that at that age, you become what you do, or you become what you try to achieve.
Okay.
And so some people just say, oh, I'm majoring in this in college. I go, why? They're like, oh, because my dad said this would be a good job. Do you like it or not? Well, it doesn't matter. Like, I just, and then I go, do you make the connection that you're doing this to please someone other than yourself? And then I have to work with a college student that has to unlearn all the stuff that they learned since they were in 7th grade.
Yep.
When I can get them at the point of searching for their identity to ask the right questions, they will frame their identity based on their core values. And so here's an observation I noticed. It's not scientifically proven, but it's from my experience, that if you're not asking the question, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? If you don't have to ask that until you're 26, 27, it's an unhealthy journey from being a teenager to 27. I've worked with so many people in their 20s that are lost, completely lost.
Yeah.
And they have a great job. They have everything that they thought they needed, but then they ask, there's something more to this, and I don't know what it is. And I'm thinking, man, I wish I had the luxury of living until my 20s to ask that question. But what I've realized is this: for me personally, not fitting in, this is why I shared it earlier, being Filipino with a Spanish name in a white suburb, I was asking the question, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
When at the earliest I can remember. Like, I would go somewhere, I'm like, I obviously don't belong here. No one looks like me.
Yeah.
And I had to navigate who I am. I had to ask the question so early on, who am I? What do I care about? I'm not like them. I don't think like that. I don't like those foods. And so I was asking myself really tough questions as a kid, and then building who I am based on those questions. But if you don't have to ask that at 9, 10, and you can wait until 29, where people are at as adults right now it makes sense to me. It makes complete sense to me because they've never really had a question. And that's where I say some people hit rock bottom where like nothing in their life is going right and they have to have this epiphany moment and wake up and do something with their life. I think more often than not, I call it rock top. People hit rock top and people are like, what is that? It's when you're successful, you have everything you think you need, everything's going well, but you know that this isn't right. That's it. That's a harder place to navigate than, man, my life's a mess. When you know your life's a mess, that's like clear. You're like, okay, I need to change. But when you have everything that the world is saying is what you need, and you know that you pursued it and you get there, but yet it doesn't feel right. That is a strange place to navigate, because people love being appreciated, but then in the back of their minds, when they hit rock top, they say, well, would you be praising me if you knew I didn't like me?
Yeah.
And that's what I hope to avoid. And that's where I want to guide people away from. To
Well,
ask those
I
questions.
think when you help people identify that kind of why part, I know I was fortunate in my life. Like I said, I just started off for a job, but was fortunate and blessed in a lot of ways, but unfortunate that in 86, literally the spring of my first year up here in Minneapolis, my father passed away from cancer at the age of 50, who had been my basketball coach, teacher, father. I coached with him for a couple of years. So a lot more that what kind of made me open up at a very sad, moving moment was when I went to the funeral and I saw the thousands of people there that he had touched over his 25 years of teaching. And I always saw that passion, and it really hit me at a young age of 26 to say, you know what? There's a lot more than just having a job here and the difference that you can make. At that time, I hadn't taught long enough to see these kids come back and know that I impacted them. Where kind of like you're talking about, you have these kids that you worked with that are in their late 20s and approaching 30 now. And now you're getting old, up there. You're not a kid anymore, but you can still shoot the three. I know that. I've seen you on the court doing it. But it's hard sometimes for a young person working as a youth leader like yourself or as a teacher and stuff to pull through. And I just always like to kind of finish up talking about when you have those down days. I know you've gone through ups and downs, and how does that, where do you dig down to find that in that day where you go, oh man, I don't know if I got it in me today? What is there anything that you do in particular to kind of just get you up and get you going? I know you're a man of faith too, and that's played a big role for me at down times in my life, but share a little bit with us how you get through that, because we all face that sometimes, even if it's not just knowing who we are and where we fit in, but once we do know that, how do we keep fighting through?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because we're all going to hit that at different levels too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's discomfort and sometimes it's despair, and just understanding that there are levels of discomfort, because I think some people are thrown off by the smallest things, and so they make little things big things. And here's what I'll say is that sometimes when you have this feeling of pride and entitlement, inconvenience can feel like oppression. And so that's where I've just tried to put myself ever uncomfortable. I try not to get to this place where I'm comfortable, because I understand that the greatest growth never came out of the greatest comfort.
Yep.
That the greatest growth never came out of the greatest comfort. And we live in a world that's all about comfort and ease. That's why it's really hard today, because it's easy to fall into the trap of entitlement. Like, oh, you watch stuff the way that you want to watch it when you want to watch it on demand. That's part of culture, is on demand. I got tired yesterday, so I didn't want to drive anywhere, so I door dashed my food. Like, we have the power to have everything serve us, to make everything easy for us, which makes sense to me when a little discomfort hits our lives and everything's thrown off. And I share that because it comes down to perspective of when those tough times hit. Instead of complaining about it, I'd kind of lean in and say, what am I supposed to learn here? Because I know that growth comes through discomfort, and that pain is the precursor to change. And so I don't run away from discomfort. I kind of lean back and say, okay, what can I get out of this? And so that's part of how I deal with that time. And then it is truly leaning on your foundation. Like, what is holding me together. And so, and I'm grateful that you shared with me the loss of your father. And I know, my my older brother passed away this year, August 8th, of sudden cardiac arrest. And I'll tell you, that has been, and this has been the hardest journey of my life the last, 6 months, after the tragic loss and sudden loss of my brother. And in those times, I had to ask myself, like, what am I really leaning on? And like you said, it's my faith. It's my faith that that has held me together. But I grieve with gratitude, because I know that your faith and your foundation aren't really tested until the storms hit.
Yep.
And seeing family and friends of my brother, and seeing how they're holding up right now, um, and then how people are seeing how I'm holding up. And I just know that in storms, you lean on your foundation. And I know that I've experienced peace in the midst of pain. I've experienced gratitude in the midst of this grief, because in those tough times, I lean on what I believe in, and who I know myself to be serving. And so it's always a bigger picture for me. So when things don't turn out the way that I'm planning, and there's some disruption, I lean back to gather perspective, and then I kind of just lean on my foundation and say, you know what, I need to grow through this, and trust that there's something on the other end.
Yeah, that's cool. I can really appreciate that because I know I've been there at different times, ups and downs in my life. And I think one thing I've been very fortunate after retiring a few years ago, actually be 4 years this coming spring, is that I always kind of had that sense of significance in what I did in life. And it's kind of been a driving thing in retirement for me. I still like being around kids when COVID's over and I can go back to school and sub some, but to stay connected to people and make a difference. But one of the things I found out going through my whole career here, is that you got a family, and I know you do, and you got a growing family.
Yeah.
And I think you had another baby like in the last year and a half too, didn't you?
At June 10th.
Yeah, that's right. In COVID, seeing that. But and you told me the hours and the things you talked about your work. How do you balance that with family life? How do you find that time to, even though I know you don't like to ever be on the clock or off the clock, but there comes that switch to say, okay, your wife and your kids, dad and husband is here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to make sure that there's that mom and dad time alone too. How do you fit that into your schedule? Because I know you're busy as all get out.
Yeah. And I'm learning as I go. There's no, what I've found out, there are tools to help you along the way as far as scheduling and all these things. But for me, it always goes back to mindset. It goes back to perspective, and just understanding that I'm in a season of life, that I need to be there for my kids. And I can't run and do all the things that I used to be able to in my 20s when I was single.
Yeah.
And it's finding that rhythm where if I feel off, I have to pause and say, okay, there's something off here. But it comes with like a healthy understanding of self. And so if my patience is getting thin somewhere, I always have to pause and be like, okay, what am I not doing that I'm used to doing? And then I'll realize, oh, I haven't worked out in 4 days. I go, okay, that's it. I share that in the context of family because I have a great partner with my wife who is able to speak that truth to me and say, hey, your patience a little thin. It seems like this is a little off, and then help me get there. And then she's also the one to say, hey, you've been gone a lot, and really you need that partnership when you're balancing family. I need those blind spots. I need my wife to say those things. I need my mentors to check in. I've got some mentors that will ask me, hey, have you been spending time with Kate? And like, yeah, I'm home all the time. They're like, no, have you guys gone out on a date? And I go, oh, no. And so I just have people that understand my life stage and want the best for me. So they're asking tough questions when they feel they need to. So it is community, it's connection. And then the other thing for me is life it's an art, not a science. And I can't base my rhythms on someone else's family or their own personal lives. I've got to sit back and look at the tools that I have available to me. I got to look at the canvas of my life and really try to create something beautiful with it. And so my life has never been scheduled. Like here from this time to this time is family time. From this time to this time is kid work. I don't think that way. Some people need that, and that's great for them. But for me, it is here's my life. How do I invite students into my life? And so sometimes I'll have the students I work with just come grocery shopping with me. It's not a scheduled thing. It is, hey, I'm going by your house. I'm doing chores for my family.
Yeah.
Can you come alongside of me and let's talk about your life. And so it's really maximizing moments for me. Like how do I pull alongside kids in my life so it's not just this transaction like come to club, then they come to club. It's like, hey, how do we live life alongside of you? Because when they reach out to me, it's never in those office hours. Like I said, it's always, oh, something came up, but I trust that he cares about me at any time of the day. So I'm going to call him. And so it is. I don't know if that's helpful, but for me, it's like discovering my personal rhythms and really trying to maximize my time instead of kind of schedule it out.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because as I've talked to people with this channel and stuff, we're all different, and we got to find out what works best for us and what's in our personality, what's on our inside to connect with others. There's not any exact science to it, and part of it's just life, going through life. And I created this because we don't know what we don't know, because we only know what we've experienced in life and been taught and seen and learned and heard. There's a great I don't know if you've seen it online, a video with Matthew McConaughey being interviewed by John Gordon. He just talks about, my greatest teacher in life has been my experiences. And one of the things that I learned, and I've heard others talk about, is that if you want to speed up that experience, is to learn from others' experiences. So I created that so that I just don't know who might watch someday and be similar experiences to yours, but really be able to learn from what you've experienced. And I've got people from different cultures, different races, men, women, and stuff talking, so that somebody finds those little tidbits, those little tips that might help them out. And I know that you do some speaking. I seen your website a while ago. I forget what it is, but I'm sure there's some people who are going to watch this over the coming weeks and months and years that might want to connect with you. And I know you love speaking to kids. You're working with adults now, whatever. You have such an awesome message. And if you could just share that website with me, I'm going to be sure and put it in the comment section or in the description section of this conversation. But what is it again?
Yeah. So the website for my speaking is liveupspeaklife.com.
Okay.
And that's for my public speaking. But then also just people reach out through Facebook, or if they find people that know me or whatnot. And so I do speak in a lot of different contexts. I preach in churches, but at the same time, I understand how to communicate in a public setting. And so that's why I love the art of public speaking. It's not about just what message do I have. It's about what does this audience need to hear. And so I've done stuff with middle school students and older adults. And I love opportunities that kind of stretch my range. Yep. And so whether it's the website or just through personal connections with you, I mean, I just encourage anyone to reach out. And like you said, I'm with you. I value the perspective of others. Yep. And I hold loosely to my own. I think that's an issue that is happening. People are cling so tightly to their own worldview that they're unable to hear what other people are saying. And I think it limits the way that we view the world. We feel like it's protecting our own, but it's when we loosen the grip on the way that we see life, we actually see life more fully. And so I just love that, hearing that that's kind of where your heart is as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate your reflection, because I know I've learned a lot in these interviews over the last month, is that you've gone through the highs of life and the lows of life just in this past year. And I know I'm in my 60s, but I'm not the same person as my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. Life happens, and it makes you have to reflect all the time. And if you don't, you're going to wake up someday and go, oh my God, how did I get here? Who am I? What am I about? And I think as you talk about how you do that and reflect back, life's a process and it's an experience, and we only have one to live, and live it to the fullest. And I think when you can impact and make a difference in the lives of others, it really is fulfilling. And with that said, just here to wrap up, if there's just a few words from the heart that somebody may be watching and say, do I want to continue to work with kids? It's tough, it's challenging me, or to keep fighting, or somebody loves what they do just to make me more excited and passionate, because I'm like cranked out right now just talking to you. I wish I could go out, go to school and hang out with kids, go to the game, have some fun, do something with kids. I do miss hanging out with teenagers. I can sit in my house by myself most of the time. My wife's at work. But wrap us up with some words of wisdom, just a little passion, motivation to send people off with today.
Yeah, I will say that the reason I got into the work that I do is because I wanted to make an impact. I think we all want to do work that is significant. And so I wanted to make an impact on people's lives. And for me, it was never pursuing a goal. It was pursuing people. And so when you work for and with people, you have to understand that there's no end. There's no like time when then it's done. When you're working with people, it's going to be the most difficult thing that you do, but it's going to be the most fulfilling thing that you do. Yeah. And that's the truth. The greatest pain that anyone will ever feel is relational. It's not a physical thing. It's a relational pain, whether it's a friend said something about you, or a coworker said something, or gave you praise. Like the greatest moments in our life and the greatest pain of our life is tied to a person. And so when you work with people, you are on the right track to feeling fulfilled in anything that you do, whether it's teaching, whether it's being connected with the person that's checking you out at Target. It's like those personal connections is the purpose. And for me, my former students are the reminder of why I do it. Because they've either said to me, I'm grateful that you were in my life at this point in my life, or they say things like, if it wasn't for you, I'd be somewhere else. And so the longer you get in, do this work, the more stories you can lean on. If I did this and quit after 2 years, I wouldn't have the stories of transformation that I lean on today. And so Darby is a kid that I've worked with, and he was an 8th grader when I met him, and now he's 26. And so I can't quit because I work with him. So anytime I feel like my job doesn't matter, I look at him and I literally say, well, it was for him. It made a difference for him. So the more we stay connected with those that we've invested in, they are going to be the ones that carry us through in the times where we think it's time to quit. Yeah. And so just to sum things up, when you're in it for people, people become the purpose. And that's a great place to be, because we all want to do something fulfilling. And when you invest in people, that's the type of work you crave.
Awesome. I love that saying, when you're in it for people, people become the purpose. That's a great one to remember. And I want to thank you so much for being on here today, Cesar. I really appreciate this talk. I can't wait to follow you over the next 5, 10, 15 years and see the impact you have. Hopefully I'm still here in 20, 30 years from now to see it. But thanks so much, on a personal level, for what you do for the kids in our community and the families. And I wish you all the best. I know you're going to keep on impacting lives in such a positive way. And God bless and take care. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For those of you tuning in, stay tuned. I got a little wrap up that's going to come on after this. If you like what you heard, be sure and subscribe and ring the bell. I'll have information on Cesar's website in the description. And thanks for being here today, folks. Take care, Cesar. Hi, and welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. Got my reading glasses on here. Coach Etch, I'm still not a young guy anymore, but just want to share some of the highlights that I really got out of that talk with Cesar today. I thought that was awesome. He is just, what a wonderful young man. He's touched so many lives in our community, and I'm so glad he's able to come on the show today. I loved his quote he kicked off with, you live your life forward and you understand it backwards. What a neat way to think about life. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it's amazing as you get older how you start to understand what transpired. And the sooner you can start to figure that out, I think it's a great way to reflect and continue to grow and build in your life. When he talked about his job, he has a demanding job. He juggles a lot of things in his hats. He doesn't look at it as a 9-to-5 job. He doesn't have any office hours, and he's a little bit different than as a teacher would be in a classroom where you've got your schedule set for you. but he likes to set his mindset and figure out where he is and why he's there. Mindset is a big key thing for Cesar. Sometimes it gets exhausting, but he's here to help the kids grow. He erased that box around his schedule to help understand his role. When he's at a kid's game, for him, he's not working. This is his mindset. He enjoys being there. That's a bonus. His office hours are kind of built around his life, and that works for him in the role that he plays. But I think lots of times life, the perspective you put it in, your mindset can be the key to how you survive it. One of the things when he started to talk with students, and I think you can apply this in any setting, is some of the questions that he uses to help guide kids to knowing where they're at. Because he says, what a mistake having worked with people of all ages in life, people in their 20s and 30s, having worked in his ministry and at his church, but also working with these 13 and 14-year-olds. He feels it's really strong, really helpful to these kids. If at an early age, you can start to ask them the questions and make them start to think about, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? What am I supposed to do? It doesn't mean at 14, they're going to know it, but at least they're thinking about it. And that way it might help to not end up someplace by accident. He wants people to ask these questions as early as they can to get off to a more intentional start in life. Who am I? What am I at my core? What do I value? And if you don't ask that at that age, he thinks it's going to be tough, because you become what you do, or you become what you try to achieve. And I thought, what a neat perspective, the way he looks at things. Are you living your life on purpose? Are you trying to live life to please someone else? Are you living it to please you? And sometimes life can go on and we can find that out too late in life sometimes, of really what is making us happy. Are you living and going where you want to be going? When tough times come, that's the last thing I'll kind of wrap up a little bit here, how he wrapped up his own mindfulness and where he's at. When the tough times come, he leans in and says, what am I supposed to learn here, rather than getting down about the tough times? And as you heard, he's gone through a year of highs and lows, just about the extremes that you can have. He thinks you should, when you're supposed to learn something here, lean on your foundation and what is holding you together. For him, it's his faith. And as he talked about, like even in the extreme loss of his big brother, he can still grieve with gratitude. It's always keep the bigger picture in perspective for him. He wants to have a healthy understanding of his self and balance for his life, and be able to pause and reflect. One thing I think that's pretty cool, and I've heard a common thread from people, is having mentors to count on. He really counts on his wife to help say, hey, you need to back off now. You need to find some time here. I know he involves his wife and his kids. He brings the kids that he works with, the young kids, he brings them into his life, gets them involved in his life. His family's involved in his professional life too. Are you keeping it all in perspective? He has outside mentors that follow his life. He talks about what's going on. Are you making sure you're making enough time for your family, for your kids? So that's kind of what works for him. I thought was really cool that he says that everyday life's an art, not a science. He says, and he's painting his canvas every day. He's trying to maximize moments every day. What a wonderful way to live, and a philosophy of perspective to come. And he said, to just kind of end it, he says, when you're in it for people, that becomes the purpose. So as you go on, and we talked about dreams, passion, and purpose, knowing that purpose, it makes life a lot simpler for you. And then helping adjust students, to help the students or the youth that you work with start to understand their purpose. And it doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the same the whole life. It can develop, but at least a person knows how to paint that canvas every day, because life is art. It's not science. So with that, I want to thank you again for tuning into Coach Etch Tips. I hope you enjoyed this show with Cesar. If you did, be sure and hit the subscribe button and like button. If you want to check out and learn more about him and his speaking at liveupandspeaklife.com, it is in the description, and we'll be added links here so you can check out Cesar. He's just an open guy. You can find him on Facebook, on social media out there. And with that, have a great time, and we'll see you next time on Coach Etch Tips. Goodbye.